Right now, the most successful, grounded, and free people you admire have one thing in common that you don't see on the surface: a trained mind, a practiced inner life, a relationship with their thoughts that most people never develop. And while they were building that quietly daily, everyone else was reacting, being dragged around by moods, fears, and impulses they had no language for and no tools to address. The gap between those two groups of people grows every day. And the doorway into the first group is always open, but only if you choose to walk through it. Start right now, press play like this, subscribe, and share it. Help someone close the gap today. Chapter 1: The Battle Within. There is a war happening inside you right now. It does not make headlines. No one reports on it. No one sees the daily victories or the silent defeats. But make no mistake, this is the most important battle you will ever fight. It is the battle for control of your own mind. Every day from the moment you wake up, your mind begins to speak. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it shouts. It tells you to hit snooze. It tells you you're too tired, too stressed, too overwhelmed. It reminds you of past failures. It predicts future disappointment. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not in control, you start to believe it. Most people live their entire lives as prisoners of these thoughts. They wake up reacting instead of deciding. They move through their day controlled by emotion instead of guided by intention. They don't realize that the voice in their head is not their master. It is supposed to be their tool. Imagine a man driving a powerful car. The engine is strong, capable of incredible speed and precision. But instead of holding the steering wheel, he lets it jerk left and right on its own. He lets the car drift wherever it wants. That is what most people do with their minds. They have the most powerful instrument ever created, yet they allow it to run unchecked, undirected, and undisciplined. Control of your mind is not something you are born with. It is something you build. It is trained, forged, and strengthened over time. And the moment you begin to take that control, everything changes. Think about a time when you felt completely in control. Maybe it was during a workout when you pushed past your limits. Maybe it was in a high-pressure situation where you stayed calm while others panicked. In those moments you weren't reacting, you were deciding, you were choosing your thoughts, your actions, your focus. That is what control feels like, and that state is not reserved for rare occasions. It can become your default. The problem is that most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the right mood. But the truth is, the mind does not respond to feelings first. It responds to direction. If you give it clear instructions, it follows. If you don't, it fills the silence with doubt, fear, and distraction. Consider this: two people face the same situation. One sees an obstacle and immediately thinks, "This is too much, I can't handle this." The other sees the same obstacle and thinks, "This is tough, but I'll figure it out." The situation is identical. The difference is control. One person lets their mind run wild. The other directs it with purpose. Control begins with awareness. You cannot manage what you do not notice. Most thoughts happen automatically like background noise. But the moment you start paying attention, you begin to see patterns. You notice the negative loops, the self-doubt, the excuses. And once you see them, you have a choice. You can accept the thought, or you can challenge it. A man once decided to change his life. He wasn't rich. He wasn't particularly talented. But he made one decision. Every time a negative thought entered his mind, he would question it. When his mind said you're not good enough, he asked based on what? When it said you'll fail, he asked, or will I learn? Over time, those thoughts lost their power, not because they disappeared, but because he stopped obeying them. Your mind is like a muscle. If you let it remain weak, it will collapse under pressure. If you train it, it becomes resilient, focused, and disciplined. But training requires effort. It requires consistency. It requires you to do things you don't feel like doing, waking up early when your mind says sleep, finishing tasks when your mind says quit, staying calm when your mind wants to panic. These are the reps, these are the moments that build control. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There is a reason discipline feels uncomfortable. It is the process of taking control away from your impulses and giving it to your intentions. It is choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. And every time you make that choice, you strengthen your ability to control your mind. Think of your thoughts as suggestions, not commands. Just because a thought appears does not mean you have to act on it. Just because you feel something does not mean it is true. This simple shift changes everything. A professional athlete does not let doubt decide their performance. A successful entrepreneur does not let fear dictate their moves. They feel the same emotions as everyone else, but they do not surrender control to them. They acknowledge the thought, then they choose their response. You have that same ability. It starts small. You notice a negative thought and pause. You take a breath. You replace it with something stronger, something more constructive. You repeat this process again and again until it becomes natural. Over time, your internal dialogue changes. The voice that once held you back begins to support you. The mind that once created chaos begins to create clarity. But make no mistake, this is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Some days will feel easy, others will feel like a constant battle. There will be moments when your mind tries to pull you back into old patterns. That is normal. What matters is that you keep taking control, because the person who controls their mind controls everything. Your actions come from your thoughts. Your results come from your actions. Change your thoughts and you change the entire trajectory of your life. There will always be external challenges. There will always be uncertainty. But when your mind is under your control, those challenges lose their power over you. You stop being reactive. You start being intentional. You stop being a victim of circumstance. You become the architect of your own reality. Right now, as you listen to this, your mind is still speaking. What is it saying? Is it doubting? Is it resisting? Or is it starting to believe that control is possible? The truth is, control is not given, it is taken, and it begins with a decision. A decision to stop letting your thoughts run unchecked. A decision to question, to direct, to discipline your mind. As this chapter comes to a close, think about this. How often do you let your thoughts control your actions? How many opportunities have you missed because you believed a limiting thought? And what could your life look like if you decided starting today to take control of your mind instead of letting it control you? Chapter 2: The Power of Focus. You've already seen the truth that most people ignore. The real battle is internal. And control of your mind is not automatic. It is built through awareness, discipline, and intentional action. When you stop reacting to every thought and start directing them, you begin to shift from being controlled to being in control. Now the next step is even more critical, because once you take control of your mind, you must decide where to aim it. Control without direction is wasted potential. A powerful mind that lacks focus is like a high-performance engine with no destination. It burns energy but goes nowhere meaningful. And in today's world, focus is under constant attack. Look around: notifications, social media, endless news cycles, entertainment on demand. Your attention is being pulled in 1,000 directions every single day. Every distraction weakens your ability to stay locked in on what truly matters. And over time, that scattered attention becomes a habit. You start many things but finish few. You think about your goals but rarely make real progress toward them. A focus is not just about concentration. It is about deciding what deserves your mental energy and what does not. Think about a spotlight on a dark stage. Wherever the light shines, that becomes the center of attention. Everything else fades into the background. Your mind works the same way. Whatever you focus on grows stronger in your perception. If you focus on problems, they expand. If you focus on solutions, opportunities appear. There was a young man working a job he didn't enjoy. Every day he complained about his boss, his co-workers, the long hours. His mind was constantly focused on what was wrong, and because of that he stayed stuck. He couldn't see a way out because his attention was glued to the problem. One day something shifted. He decided to stop asking, "Why is this so bad?" and start asking, "What can I do to improve my situation?" That single shift in focus changed everything. He started learning new skills after work. He networked with people in different industries. Within a year, he moved into a completely different career. The situation didn't magically change overnight. His focus did. What you focus on determines your direction. Your mind will always find evidence to support whatever you choose to focus on. If you believe things are hopeless, your mind will point out every failure, every obstacle, every reason to quit. But if you decide to focus on progress, your mind will begin to notice small wins, possibilities, and paths forward. This is not about blind positivity. It is about strategic focus. Imagine trying to read a book in a room full of noise, people talking, music playing, phones buzzing. You might try to concentrate, but your attention keeps breaking. That is what most people's minds feel like every day. Too much noise, not enough control. Now imagine removing the distractions. Quieting the room, sitting down with intention. Suddenly your focus sharpens, you absorb more, you understand more, you move forward. That is what disciplined focus does for your life. It starts with eliminating what doesn't matter. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion, not every headline, not every distraction. When you say yes to everything, you dilute your power. When you say no to what doesn't align, you strengthen it. A focused mind is selective. It chooses carefully. Consider the habits of high performers. They don't just work hard, they work with precision. They block out time. They minimize distractions. They create environments that support deep focus. They understand that attention is a limited resource and they guard it fiercely. You can do the same. Start by identifying what truly matters. What are your priorities? What goals actually move your life forward? Once you are clear on that, everything else becomes easier to filter. If it doesn't align, it gets less of your attention. Then train your mind to stay present. When you are working, work. When you are learning, learn. When you are resting, rest. Multitasking is not efficiency. It is divided attention, and divided attention leads to average results. There will be resistance. Your mind will want to wander. It will look for easy distractions. That is normal. The goal is not to eliminate distraction completely. The goal is to notice it quickly and return your focus intentionally. Think of it like training a dog. If it runs off, you don't get angry. You calmly bring it back, again and again. Over time it learns to stay. Your mind is no different. There is also power in sustained focus. Anyone can focus for a few minutes. Very few can maintain it for extended periods. But that is where real progress happens: deep work, consistent effort, uninterrupted attention. That is how skills are built, goals are achieved, and momentum is created. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be consistent. Even an hour of focused effort every day can transform your life over time, but that hour must be protected. No distractions, no interruptions, just pure attention directed at something meaningful. And here is something most people overlook. Your focus doesn't just affect what you do, it affects how you feel. When your attention is scattered, you feel overwhelmed. When it is focused, you feel in control. Clarity replaces confusion. Progress replaces frustration. Confidence begins to build, not because everything is easy, but because you are moving forward with intention. This is how control of the mind turns into control of life. First you take charge of your thoughts, then you direct your focus, and through that focus you shape your actions, but you must be honest with yourself. Where is your attention going right now? How much of it is being wasted on things that don't move your life forward? How often do you allow distractions to take control without even noticing? These are not small questions. They reveal the truth about your current level of control. Because at the end of the day, your life is the result of what you consistently focus on, not what you say you want, not what you think about occasionally, but what you give your attention to day after day. As this chapter comes to a close, bring your awareness back to your own habits. What are you focusing on most of the time? Are those thoughts and activities leading you toward the life you want or pulling you away from it? And if you had the discipline to direct your focus with intention every single day, what could you build, what could you change, and who could you become? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Chapter 3: Discipline over Emotion. You've already seen how the battle within determines everything and how focus directs the power of your mind toward meaningful outcomes. You've learned that attention is not automatic, it is chosen, and that what you consistently focus on shapes your reality. But there is another layer. One that determines whether you follow through or fall back, because knowing what to do is not enough. You must do it, especially when you don't feel like it. That is where discipline comes in. Emotion is unpredictable. Some days you wake up energized, ready to take on the world. Other days everything feels heavy. Motivation rises and falls. It comes and goes without warning. If you rely on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. Discipline removes that uncertainty. A discipline is not about being perfect. It is about being reliable. It is the ability to follow through on your decisions regardless of your emotional state. It is doing what needs to be done even when your mind offers a dozen excuses to avoid it. Think about the alarm clock in the morning. When it goes off, there is a moment of decision. Your mind immediately starts negotiating. It tells you that you need more rest, that today can be an exception, that you'll start tomorrow. That voice is not logical, it is comfortable, and comfort is often the enemy of progress. The disciplined person hears that voice and acts anyway, not because it feels good, but because they have trained themselves to prioritize action over emotion. There was a woman training for her first marathon. She had a demanding job, a busy schedule, and every reason to skip her early morning runs. Some days she felt motivated, most days she did, but she made a simple rule for herself. If it was a scheduled run day, she ran. No debate, no negotiation. There were mornings when she laced up her shoes half asleep. There were days when the weather was terrible, when her body felt sore, when her mind told her to quit halfway through. But she kept going, not because she always wanted to, but because she had decided that her commitment mattered more than her feelings. Months later, she crossed the finish line of her marathon, not because she was the most talented runner, but because she was the most consistent. That is the power of discipline. It bridges the gap between intention and result. Most people set goals, few follow through. The difference is not intelligence or ability, it is discipline. It is the willingness to act when it is inconvenient, uncomfortable, and difficult. Your mind will always try to take the easier path. It is wired for efficiency and survival, not growth. Growth requires effort. It requires stepping outside of what feels natural. And that is why discipline must be trained. Start small. Choose one habit, something simple but meaningful. It could be waking up at a consistent time, exercising for 30 minutes, reading instead of scrolling through your phone. The key is not the size of the action, it is the consistency. When you commit to that habit, remove the option to negotiate with yourself. Decide in advance that it will happen no matter what. When the moment comes and your mind resists, you act anyway. Over time, something powerful happens. The resistance doesn't disappear, but your response to it changes. You stop seeing discomfort as a signal to stop. You start seeing it as part of the process. That shift changes everything. Discipline also builds trust, not with others but with yourself. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who does what they say they will do. That belief strengthens your confidence, not in a loud or flashy way, but in a quiet, unshakable way. And confidence built on discipline is different. It doesn't depend on outcomes, it doesn't collapse under pressure, it is rooted in action. There will be moments when emotion feels overwhelming, stress, fear, frustration. These feelings are real, but they do not have to dictate your behavior. Discipline allows you to acknowledge the emotion without surrendering to it. Imagine a firefighter running into a burning building. Fear is present. It has to be. But training and discipline take over. Action is guided by preparation, not panic. That is the level of control you are building in your own life. You don't eliminate emotion, you rise above it. This does not mean ignoring your well-being. Discipline is not punishment, it is alignment. It is choosing actions that move you toward your goals even when your mind tries to pull you in the opposite direction. There is also a hidden benefit to discipline. It simplifies your life. When you rely on emotion, every decision becomes a debate. Should I do this now or later? Do I feel like it? Is this the right moment? That constant questioning drains your energy. Discipline removes the debate. The decision has already been made. You act, and then you move on. This clarity frees up mental space. It allows you to focus on execution instead of hesitation. And over time that efficiency compounds. But let's be clear, discipline is not built overnight. There will be days when you slip, days when you choose comfort over commitment. The difference is what you do next. Undisciplined thinking turns one mistake into a pattern. I missed today, so it doesn't matter anymore. Disciplined thinking resets immediately. I missed today, so I'm back on track tomorrow. No drama, no excuses, just a return to action. Your identity is not defined by a single moment. It is defined by repeated behavior. And every time you choose discipline, you are shaping that identity. There is a reason the most successful people emphasize routine, not because their lives are boring, but because structure creates freedom. When the important things are handled consistently, you have more time, energy, and clarity for everything else. You are not trying to control every aspect of your life. You are controlling the critical few that drive everything forward. Right now, there are areas in your life where you rely too much on how you feel. Maybe it's your work, your health, your personal growth. You know what needs to be done, but you wait for the right mood, and that waiting is what keeps you stuck. The shift is simple, but not easy. Stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" Start asking, "Did I decide to do this?" That question puts you back in control. As this chapter comes to a close, take a moment to look at your daily actions. Where are you letting emotion override commitment? What habits would transform your life if you followed through on them consistently? And who would you become if you built the discipline to act regardless of how you feel? If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Chapter 4: Rewriting Your Inner Dialogue. You've seen how the battle within shapes everything, how focus directs your mental energy, and how discipline keeps you moving even when emotions try to pull you off course. By now it's clear that control of your mind is not about force alone, it's about influence. And the most powerful form of influence you have is the way you speak to yourself every single day. There is a conversation happening in your mind at all times. It never fully stops. It comments on your actions, judges your decisions, predicts outcomes, and assigns meaning to every experience. This inner dialogue is not neutral. It is either building you up or breaking you down. Most people never question it. They accept every thought as truth. When their mind says you're not ready, they believe it. When it says you always mess this up, they accept it as fact. Over time, these thoughts become identity, not because they are accurate, but because they are repeated. Repetition creates belief. Imagine hearing the same message every day for years. Even if it started as a suggestion, it eventually feels like reality. That is exactly what happens with negative self-talk. It becomes familiar, and familiarity feels true. But here is the reality. Your inner dialogue is learned, which means it can be changed. Think about how it started. Early experiences, feedback from others, moments of failure or success. All of these contributed to the voice you hear today. At some point you adopted certain beliefs about yourself. Maybe you decided you weren't good at something. Maybe you labeled yourself as not disciplined, not confident, not capable. Those labels are not permanent, they are patterns, and patterns can be rewritten. Consider a man who struggled with public speaking. Every time he had to present, his mind flooded with thoughts like you're going to embarrass yourself or you're not as good as everyone else. His body would tense up, his voice would shake, and the experience would reinforce his belief. One day he decided to challenge that pattern, not by pretending he was perfect, but by changing his dialogue. Before every presentation he told himself, "I'm prepared, I'm improving, I don't need to be perfect, I need to be clear." It felt unnatural at first. His old thoughts didn't disappear immediately, but he kept repeating the new ones. Over time, something shifted. His focus changed. His confidence grew, not because he eliminated fear, but because he stopped feeding it with his own words. Your mind listens to you. The way you talk to yourself sets the tone for everything else. If your internal voice is constantly negative, critical, and limiting, it becomes harder to take action. It becomes harder to believe in progress. But if your internal voice is constructive, honest, and focused on growth, it creates momentum. This is not about lying to yourself. It is about choosing words that move you forward. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you say, "I'm learning how to do this." Instead of "I always fail," you say, "I didn't succeed this time, but I'm getting better." These are not empty phrases, they are directional statements. They guide your mind toward possibility instead of limitation. There is also power in how you respond to setbacks. Everyone experiences failure. The difference is interpretation. One person sees failure as proof they are not capable. Another sees it as feedback. The event is the same, the meaning is different. Your inner dialogue determines that meaning. If you fail at something and your mind says, "This just confirms I'm not good enough," your motivation drops. Your effort decreases. But if your mind says, "This shows me where I need to improve," your focus sharpens. Your effort increases. That is control. You are not controlling the outcome. You are controlling the narrative around the outcome, and that narrative shapes your next move. There is a simple practice that can transform your inner dialogue. It starts with awareness. Throughout the day, notice how you speak to yourself, especially in challenging moments. Are your thoughts supportive or critical? Are they helping you move forward or holding you back? Once you notice a negative pattern, interrupt it. Don't let it run unchecked. Replace it with something more constructive. Not something unrealistic, but something useful. This takes effort. Your mind will try to return to its old patterns. That is normal. But every time you redirect it, you weaken the old habit and strengthen the new one. Consistency is what creates change. There is also value in speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you respect. Imagine a close friend facing a challenge. Would you tell them they're not good enough? Would you remind them of every past mistake? Or would you encourage them, remind them of their strengths, and push them to keep going? You deserve that same level of support from yourself, but most people do the opposite. They are harder on themselves than anyone else. They expect perfection. And when they don't meet it, their inner dialogue becomes harsh and unforgiving. That approach does not create growth, it creates resistance. Growth requires accountability, but it also requires encouragement. You can be honest about your shortcomings without attacking your identity. You can acknowledge mistakes without defining yourself by them. You are not your worst moment. You are your patterns of behavior over time. and those patterns can be changed. Another important shift is moving from fixed language to flexible language. Words like always and never create limitations. I always mess this up. I'll never be good at this. These statements close the door on progress. Replace them with language that leaves room for growth. I haven't mastered this yet. I'm still improving. These small changes open possibilities. They keep you moving. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There is also a deeper level to this. Your inner dialogue shapes your identity, and your identity drives your behavior. If you constantly tell yourself, "I'm not disciplined," your actions will align with that belief. But if you begin to say, "I am becoming disciplined," your actions start to shift. You look for opportunities to prove that statement true. Identity is not fixed. It is reinforced daily by your thoughts and actions. So ask yourself, who are you becoming based on the way you speak to yourself? This is not about overnight transformation. It is about gradual change. Day by day, thought by thought, you reshape the way your mind operates. You move from criticism to construction, from limitation to possibility. Over time, your internal environment changes. And when that changes, your external results begin to follow. As this chapter comes to a close, listen closely to the voice in your mind. What is it saying about you right now? How often do your thoughts support your growth versus limit it? And if you took control of that inner dialogue, if you chose your words with intention every single day, how would that change the way you act, the way you perform, and the way you live your life? Chapter 5: Environment SHAPES Control. By now you understand that the battle is internal, that focus directs your energy, that discipline keeps you consistent, and that your inner dialogue shapes your identity. You've started to see that control of the mind is not a single action, but a system of habits and awareness working together. But there is another force at play, one that quietly influences your thoughts, your actions, and your results every single day. That force is your environment. Most people underestimate how much their surroundings shape their behavior. They believe everything comes down to willpower. They think if they just try harder, they will stay disciplined, focused, and in control. But willpower alone is unreliable. It fades, it gets depleted. And when it does, your environment takes over. Look at your daily life. The spaces you spend time in, the people you interact with, the content you consume. All of it sends signals to your mind. Some of those signals support your growth. Others pull you in the opposite direction. Imagine trying to eat healthy while your kitchen is filled with junk food. Every time you open the cabinet, you are faced with temptation. You might resist once, twice, maybe even a few times, but eventually the environment wins. Now imagine the same goal in a different environment. The unhealthy options are gone. The healthy ones are easy to access. Suddenly the decision becomes easier. Not because you changed your willpower, but because you changed your surroundings. Your environment either makes discipline easier or harder. There was a man who struggled with productivity. He worked from home, but his space was cluttered, noisy, and full of distractions. His phone was always within reach. The television was often on in the background. He found it nearly impossible to focus for long periods. One day he decided to make a change. He created a dedicated workspace. A clean desk, no unnecessary items, phone placed in another room, clear boundaries for work hours. At first it felt strange, but within weeks his focus improved dramatically. His output increased, not because he suddenly became more disciplined, but because his environment started working for him instead of against him. This is how powerful your surroundings are. They influence your default behavior. If your environment is filled with distractions, your mind will be scattered. If it is structured for focus, your mind will follow. If you surround yourself with people who complain, make excuses, and avoid responsibility, that mindset will start to feel normal. But if you are around people who take ownership, who push themselves, who value growth, that becomes your new standard. You don't have to rely on constant motivation when your environment reinforces the right behaviors. This is not about perfection. It is about alignment. You are creating conditions that support the person you want to become. Start with your physical space. Look around the areas where you spend the most time. Are they organized or chaotic? Do they encourage focus or distraction? Small changes can have a big impact. Clear your workspace, remove unnecessary clutter. Design your environment with intention. Then consider your digital environment. What are you consuming daily? Social media, news, entertainment. These inputs shape your thoughts more than you realize. If you are constantly exposed to negativity, comparison, and distraction, your mind absorbs it. Be selective. Choose content that aligns with your goals. Limit what doesn't serve you. Your attention is valuable. Protect it. Your social environment matters just as much. The people around you influence your standards, your habits, and your mindset. This does not mean you need to cut people out of your life. But you do need to be aware of the impact they have. If you spend time with people who constantly doubt themselves, who avoid challenges, who settle for less, it becomes easier to do the same. But when you are around people who take action, who hold themselves accountable, who strive for more, it raises your level. You begin to match the expectations around you. There is also the environment you create internally. The routines you follow, the structure you build into your day. These are part of your environment as well. A consistent routine reduces decision fatigue. It removes uncertainty. It creates a rhythm that supports discipline and focus. Think about your mornings. How do you start your day? Do you wake up and immediately react to notifications, emails, and external demands? Or do you take control of the first part of your day, setting the tone with intention? The way you begin your day influences everything that follows. A structured start creates momentum. A reactive start creates chaos. The same applies to your evenings. How you end your day affects your ability to recover, reflect, and prepare for the next one. Your environment is not just where you are, it is how you structure your time within it. There will always be factors you cannot control: noise, unexpected interruptions, external challenges, but there is always something you can adjust, something you can improve. A focus on what is within your control. You don't need to redesign your entire life overnight. Start with one area, make it better, then build from there. Each improvement compounds. Each adjustment strengthens your ability to stay focused, disciplined, and in control. There is a reason successful people are intentional about their environment. They understand that it is not just about effort, it is about design. When your environment supports your goals, you spend less energy fighting distractions and more energy making progress. This is not about making things easy. It is about making them possible. If your goal is to read more, place books where you can see them. If your goal is to exercise, prepare your workout space in advance. If your goal is to focus, remove the sources of distraction before you begin. Set yourself up to win. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There is also a deeper layer to this. Your environment sends signals about what is normal. When you consistently place yourself in environments that align with growth, your standards rise. What once felt difficult becomes expected. What once required effort becomes routine. You begin to operate at a higher level without constant struggle, but this requires honesty. You must be willing to look at your current environment and recognize where it is holding you back. Not with judgment, but with clarity. Awareness is the first step to change. Ask yourself what in your environment is making it harder for you to stay in control of your mind. What is pulling your attention away from what matters? And what changes, even small ones, could shift that dynamic? Because at the end of the day, control of your mind is not just about what happens inside you. It is also about what you allow around you. As this chapter comes to a close, take a moment to evaluate your surroundings. Are they supporting the person you want to become or keeping you tied to who you used to be? What can you change today that would make discipline easier, focus sharper, and control stronger? And if you intentionally designed your environment to match your goals, how much faster could you move toward the life you are building? Chapter 6: Total Control, Total Freedom. You've seen how the battle within determines your direction, how focus sharpens your path, how discipline keeps you moving, how your inner dialogue shapes your identity, and how your environment either strengthens or weakens your control. Piece by piece, you've built an understanding that control of the mind is not one decision, but a system of intentional living. Now it's time to bring it all together, because true control does not restrict your life, it expands it. Most people misunderstand control. They think it limits freedom. They believe structure is restrictive, discipline is exhausting, and mental control is rigid. But the opposite is true. When you don't control your mind, you are controlled by everything else, by impulses, distractions, emotions, and external pressures. That is not freedom. That is reaction. Real freedom comes from control. Think about it. If you cannot control your focus, your time gets taken from you. If you cannot control your emotions, your decisions become unpredictable. If you cannot control your habits, your results remain inconsistent. Without control, you are constantly at the mercy of whatever happens around you. But when you take control of your mind, everything changes. You decide what deserves your attention. You decide how to respond to challenges. You decide the actions you take regardless of how you feel. And those decisions compound into a life that is directed, not accidental. Imagine waking up every day with clarity, not because everything is easy, but because you know what matters and you trust yourself to follow through. There is no constant internal debate, no hesitation, no waiting for the right mood. There is action. That is freedom. There was a man who spent years feeling stuck. He had goals, but he lacked consistency. He blamed his circumstances, his schedule, even his luck. But deep down he knew the truth. He was not in control of his mind. He followed his emotions, gave in to distractions, and allowed negative thoughts to dictate his actions. One day he made a decision, not a dramatic overnight transformation, but a commitment to take control in small, consistent ways. He started managing his focus, building discipline, changing his inner dialogue, and adjusting his environment. At first, the changes felt small, but over time they added up. Months later, his life looked different, not perfect, but directed. He was making progress. He felt more confident, more capable, more in control. The external changes followed the internal ones. That is how it works. You don't wait for your life to change before you take control. You take control and your life changes as a result. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming the version of yourself that is already possible but currently held back by lack of control. The potential is there, the capability is there. What has been missing is consistent direction. And now you have the tools. You understand that thoughts are not commands. You know that focus is a choice. You have seen that discipline is built through action, not feeling. You recognize that your inner dialogue can be rewritten. You are aware that your environment can be designed. All of these pieces work together, but knowledge alone is not enough. Action is what creates change. There will always be reasons to delay, reasons to wait, reasons to tell yourself that you will start tomorrow. But tomorrow is where control is lost. Control exists in the present moment, in the decisions you make right now. Right now you can choose to focus. Right now you can choose to act. Right now you can choose to direct your thoughts instead of following them. This moment is where everything begins. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need more time. You don't need to feel ready. You need to decide, and once you decide, you follow through. There will still be challenges. There will still be moments of doubt, distraction, and resistance. Control does not eliminate difficulty. It allows you to navigate it. It gives you the ability to stay steady when things get hard, to keep moving when others stop. That is what separates those who achieve from those who remain stuck. Consistency, not extreme effort for a short time, but steady, disciplined action over the long term. That is how control turns into results. That is how small decisions become major changes. You are not defined by where you are right now. You are defined by the direction you choose and the actions you take consistently. Every controlled thought, every focused moment, every disciplined action, they move you forward, and over time those moments build a life where you are not reacting to everything around you, but creating something meaningful, a life where you trust yourself, where your actions align with your goals, where your mind works for you instead of against you. That is the outcome of control. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As this journey comes to an end, understand that this is not the finish line. It is the starting point. Everything you've heard is only valuable if you apply it, not once, not occasionally, but consistently. You have the ability to take control of your mind. That ability is not reserved for a select few. It is available to you right now, but it requires commitment. It requires discipline. It requires you to act even when it's difficult. No one else can do this for you. You are responsible for your thoughts, your focus, your actions, and that responsibility is not a burden, it is power. Because when you accept that responsibility, you also accept control. And when you have control, you have the ability to shape your life in a way that most people never do. So as you move forward, carry this with you. In every situation, in every challenge, in every decision, remember that you have a choice. You can let your mind run on autopilot, or you can take control and direct it with intention. That choice is always there. The question is, will you take it? Will you choose discipline when it's uncomfortable? Will you choose focus when distractions call? Will you choose constructive thoughts when negativity appears? Will you shape your environment instead of being shaped by it? And if you do consistently day after day, what kind of life could you create? What limits could you break? What version of yourself could you become? The answer is not something you need to search for, it is something you build. One thought at a time, one action at a time, one decision at a time. Because the person who controls their mind truly does control everything.